How's it going, guys? It's been really difficult these last couple of weeks to come up with a topic that was worthy, I think worthy. Again, how do we know? How do we know what we do is ever worth anything? How do we ever actually get the proper feedback that we are somehow making the impact that the Lord intended? Or perhaps even what we intended ourselves. You know, in the time that I've known the Lord, one of the biggest things that He has done for me specifically, other than teach me all these awesome facts about His Word and what's coming and what to expect and perhaps even what to say when somebody asks me. I feel like I'm a bumbling idiot at times, but I've also seen great change in those who have had an open mind and an open heart about what the Word actually says. And although it's a very small percentage, I've seen plenty of people stand up and do something about it. So I know it's not a complete waste, but I get into these ruts where I'm constantly questioning as to whether or not this is at all worthwhile, and feeling as though I don't actually have the ability to sustain this over the long term, or to be of any real use in the end, to be honest. And all this reminds me of is the topic of today's video, the story of Elijah up on Mount Carmel having such great success. And in fact, this is from 1 Kings 18, starts verse 16 all the way to the end of the chapter in 45. And then we basically get to see the aftermath in chapter 19 from 1 through 18, when the Lord is basically... Well, here's the story. Let's break it down. You've got Ahab and Jezebel, two evil leaders. Technically, there shouldn't have been a queen of Israel, but two evil leaders who essentially drug the northern tribes down into extreme, not only apostasy, but outright witchcraft, demon worship, all sorts of disgusting, evil things that you can imagine. They were part and parcel of the everyday life of the northern 10 tribes during this particular reign. Elijah was essentially the only true prophet left to the Lord, to Yahweh, in the entirety of the northern 10 tribes. There were little blips of faith here and there, but he was really the only one leading the charge. He goes up to Mount Carmel one day, tells Ahab and Jezebel, Ahab specifically, to gather up all of your prophets. Gather up your Baal prophets, your Ashtoreth prophets, all your other disgusting practice prophets, whoever they are, whatever their names are. Those are the only two named. And they're brought up to the mountainside, and they're told to basically, Elijah will sacrifice a bull, they'll sacrifice a bull, build up a nice pyre, create an altar, and then he allows the other prophets to do their little weird dances and their weird little ritualistic nonsense that is the height of disgusting pagan behavior. You can put it in. They start cutting themselves, and they're screaming and dancing, doing all kinds of stupid stuff. And of course, the people of Israel are watching on the scene, just gently, slightly above them at Mount Carmel. Of course, Elijah starts to taunt them because no fire is coming down to consume it. And they're saying, well, I thought your gods are gods. Well, the end result is Elijah not only does the exact same thing as them, but orders a whole bunch of water be poured upon the wood and upon the sacrifice, and digs a trench to the point to where not only is everything completely soaked, but the trench is full of water. And then he simply stands out in front of the people, makes a prayer, and the Lord God absolutely incinerates all of this mess that he just created, even to the point of, it says, I think, literally licking up all the water in the trench. So it was so hot and so all-consuming that it immediately took away all that was sitting there in front of him. And this, of course, was after he built an altar, including 12 stones to represent the 12 tribes. The point of it was that he was under the impression, Elijah, that this great act was going to be enough to absolutely shift the spiritual paradigm, if you will, of the northern 10 tribes. Unfortunately, although the people did initially, swear that Yahweh was God and kill off all the prophets, literally drug them down into the valley and slaughtered them, it still ended up that the people did not run after Elijah and basically take out the evil leadership of the nation. And it got to Elijah to such a degree that he basically considered himself an utter failure. He actually ended up being threatened by Jezebel in the next chapter, basically being told, what has been done to my prophets will be done to you. So, of course, he does the one thing we're commanded repeatedly the most amount of times not to do, and, of course, he fears for his life. So he heads back to Mount Horeb, which is also Mount Sinai, and he's hiding in the rocks. He's woe is meing. He's having angels literally wake him up for meals, and, he's emotionally exacerbated and utterly exhausted from the journey and the running and all that stuff, and all he can do is curse himself and say, all I've done is be zealous for the Lord my whole life. All I wanted to do was exactly what you wanted me to do, and my hope was after we made these great signs occur that these people would change. Now this gets into a question about how evil generations demand signs and how they are basically not convinced because their free will is made up before they ever see these signs. And anytime that they're claiming that they want to see signs, they're fooling themselves out loud into thinking that somehow there's something on this earth that could blast away their ability to make a stern free will decision, in this case against God. But the hope is when something so magnificent like that occurs and it's in the name of God and you're on God's side, that you would see the right thing happen. You would see the people turn. You would see the evil be stamped out, because obviously a people can't be ruled over by a leader that are unwilling to be ruled by him. So if they really wanted to have taken out the leadership, they could have, and that was the whole point. But instead, the people went back to their normal everyday and basically let Ahab and Jezebel continue to run roughshod over the land, have their way with the people, poison them with false teaching, rebuild all of their priests, or whatever the heck they called them. I'm sure they had a different name for them, but priests to Baal and Ashtoreth and so on. As the Lord is basically gently reminding, and he does this in such a beautiful fashion. This is what's awesome. This is why we should read the Bible. But he tells Elijah after the second meeting with the angel, the second meal, to get up and go outside, and the presence of the Lord will be brought by the mountain, much hearkening back very much to the same relative occurrence that happened with Moses earlier on in the Bible. And we're told that a violent wind comes through that breaks the mountain apart, but the Lord wasn't in it. And then thunder and lightning and fire, but the Lord wasn't in it. But then Elijah heard a gentle word, and that is what stimulated him to get up and go out and actually address the Lord on the mountainside. And the picture there was, and I'm hoping you guys can understand this because I think it's fairly simple, but the world demands signs. The world demands extreme action. The world likes to be jarred out of its place. But the reality is the Holy Spirit itself is so calm and so gentle and so infinitely more active than we would ever assume, that the most gentlest of breezes is far more representative of the Spirit's actions than any earth-shaking event, right? And he closes this show, this series of signs to Elijah by making the statement that even amongst all of that so-called failure that Elijah was, I don't want to say rightfully, but upset about, right? The Lord said that he had managed, to spare 7,000 that had never bowed a knee to Baal or kissed its image. So in other words, there are still, even amongst all of those evil people, a fairly small contingent in total, but in God's eyes, obviously the remnant is all that counts, because they're the ones that actually believe and actually want him. And that they were still there, and they were still active. And even in spite of all of the so-called failure that Elijah had just experienced, there was still a very significant remnant that were believing and basically rooting not only for Elijah, of course, but also for the true Yahweh God. And then, of course, afterward we see we see Ahab essentially get humbled, but then go back to his own evil ways, and eventually ends up being killed. His wife Jezebel falls from a tower, ends up basically dying in a disgusting way. You guys can read that again. It was 1 Kings chapter 18, 16 through 45 is the Mount Carmel incident. And then chapter 19, verses 1 through 18 is the meeting with the Lord at Sinai, Horeb, to bring Elijah back. What does all of this mean? The world demands a sign. The world demands extreme. The world demands to be shaken out of its place. But when it comes to what the Lord has for those who love him, it's very gentle, it's very consistent, and it's not pushy. It's not something that is going to force anyone to come to a place of faith outside of their own desire. But it does not mean that just because our perception of failure and our perception of the world seeming to win the battles has anything to do with God's version or God's actual success. Because in the end, the only ones that last are those who choose for him that he has chosen. So I guess this was just a gentle reminder to me in my mind that I need to pull myself out of the dirt and understand that I can't allow, nor can any of us really, allow our flesh to dictate what is success in the eyes of the Lord. This video will probably be ignored. It will probably get very low view counts, and it'll probably be another one of those things that everybody absolutely needs to hear, but they absolutely ignore. But I hope for those of you who actually do watch this and understand the time that we're in and understand the fact that, well, the fact that you're still believing, the fact that you're still wanting actual teaching, and the fact that you don't give up even in spite of all the nonsense around you, and you're always looking, I'm hoping for you anyhow, looking for that still, gentle, small voice of the Spirit to come and tell you all the things you probably don't want to know or want to hear, but need to and absolutely must heed to be able to make the most of this life while working for the Lord, very much against the tides of all of our perceptions. Let's be honest. This whole experiment feels like a gigantic failure when really everybody is getting exactly what they want. Even those who are evil and stupid and have decided to fight him. In the end, God, lovingly so, even though it's the worst thing possibly for them, is still going to give them what they want. Complete and utter separation from him for eternity. And it's not that there's, quote, nothing we can do about it. It's that there's nothing that we can do about it that wouldn't destroy their ability to make that choice fairly. And that's really what this is all about. Understanding God's measures of success are not worldly. They are holy. They are utterly separate from anything this world represents. And it's good to sit down and take note of the fact that no matter what we think, no matter what we see, no matter where we go, no matter who we talk to, in the end, the Lord not only wins, but he wins to infinity. And all of us who have chosen to come along with him are benefactors of that infinity, of that eternal, never-ending, spectacular awesomeness. We just need to keep holding on. We need to keep taking, we need to keep turning the other cheek. We need to basically keep taking our beatings until the day comes when we get called home and we're no longer scapegoats for people and their decisions to reject and ignore the true, holy, loving God. I don't know if this was useful to you guys or not. I just know that this was what was supposed to happen today, and I really am apologetic for letting this stuff get to me. I'm generally a lot tougher than this, and I knew this lesson. I've known this lesson for years. This whole situation about Elijah, it was amazing when I first understood it. It's even still more amazing now that knowing all these things, I can still slip back into this. That means that perhaps any one of us is potentially guilty of these things, and we just need to know that he is ever forgiving and ever loving, just the same way he was with that super prophet. And he has a job for all of us. We just have to stand up and keep doing it. Let me know if this was useful, guys. Share it with somebody who's struggling and suffering, thinking that their lives aren't worth anything. And lovingly let them know that the only way to actually make an impact is to learn to listen for that quiet, still, small voice and ignore all the thunder and all the fire and all the explosions around you that are trying to distract you and make you think that somehow you failed, when really it's all about his success and not ours. Like, share, subscribe, do all that stuff if you want. If not, well, hopefully this helped you grow. Good talking with you guys. Bless you all. Talk to you soon.